I was holding the invoice when my world collapsed. $80,000 for a wedding that was never supposed to happen. My sister Emma stood in my kitchen, mascara streaking down her cheeks, begging me to make her dreams come true. But 3 hours later, I discovered that her dream was actually my nightmare. And the wedding she desperately needed me to pay for? It was designed to destroy the one thing I loved more than money, more than family, more than my own life. If you want to hear stories about family betrayal that cuts deeper than any stranger's knife, subscribe to the channel and hit like so the next story comes out even faster. My name is Rebecca, I'm 38 years old, and I own a successful marketing consultancy. Emma is my younger sister by 6 years, and for most of our lives, I thought she was my best friend. We grew up in a modest household where every dollar was counted, every luxury was a sacrifice. When I started making real money in my 30s, I promised myself I'd take care of Emma the way our parents never could. I should have known something was wrong when she showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning, crying before she even said hello. "Becca," she sobbed, throwing her arms around me. "I need help. I need your help." I led her to the kitchen, made coffee, and waited. Emma had always been dramatic, but this felt different. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone and showed me pictures. A gorgeous wedding dress, elaborate floral arrangements, a reception hall that looked like a fairy tale. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Everything I've ever dreamed of. But Marcus and I can't afford it. The venue alone is $40,000. The dress is $8,000. The flowers, the catering, the photographer." She trailed off, looking at me with those wide blue eyes that had gotten her out of trouble since childhood. "How much total?" I asked, though I already suspected I didn't want to know. $80,000, she said quietly. "I know it's a lot, but Becca, you're the only person who can help us. You're successful, you have money, and you've always taken care of me."
Isto certo é $80,000.
It wasn't that I couldn't afford it. My business was doing well, very well. But it was a staggering amount for a single day. "Emma, that's more than most people make in 2 years. Are you sure you need all of this?" She grabbed my hand across the table. "I've waited my whole life for this day. I've dreamed about walking down the aisle in that dress, in that venue with those flowers. Marcus is the love of my life, and I want everything to be perfect. Please, Becca. You're my sister. You're my only hope." I looked at this woman I'd spent decades protecting, nurturing, supporting through college, through bad relationships, through career changes that never seemed to stick. How could I say no? "When's the wedding?" I asked. 6 weeks from Saturday." 6 weeks. My mind raced through the logistics, the financial planning, the complete reorganization of my budget this would require. But looking at Emma's tear-streaked face, I couldn't find the word no. "Okay," I said softly. "I'll help you." The relief on her face was immediate and complete. She launched herself across the table to hug me, sobbing thank you over and over again. For a moment, I felt that warm glow of being the big sister, the protector, the one who could make dreams come true. If only I had known whose dreams were really being fulfilled. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of wedding planning madness. Emma involved me in every decision, every detail, every microscopic choice from napkin colors to flower arrangements. At first, I thought she wanted my input because I was paying. Then I realized she needed me there for a different reason. She was terrified of something, though I couldn't figure out what. She was jumpy, constantly checking her phone, looking over her shoulder. When I asked if she was nervous about the wedding, she'd laugh it off, but the laugh never reached her eyes. "Just pre-wedding jitters," she'd say, but her hands would shake when she said it. 3 weeks before the wedding, I met Marcus for the first time since Emma had asked for my help. They'd been together for 8 months, engaged for 4, but I'd been traveling for work and somehow kept missing him. When Emma finally brought him to Sunday dinner at my house, I understood why she'd been so eager for this expensive wedding. Marcus was ordinary, pleasant enough, but forgettable. Brown hair, average height, soft handshake, the kind of man you'd pass on the street without a second glance. He worked in IT support, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and seemed genuinely bewildered by the elaborate wedding plans. "It's really generous of you to help us out like this," he said during dinner, looking uncomfortable. Emma insisted on all the fancy stuff. I would have been happy with something simple. Marcus. Emma snapped, her voice sharp. We talked about this. This is important to me. He raised his hands in surrender. Of course, babe. Whatever makes you happy. I watched this interaction with growing unease. There was something off about their dynamic, something forced. Emma was performing the role of excited bride, but Marcus looked like a man who'd stumbled into the wrong movie. After dinner, when Marcus went to the bathroom, I cornered Emma in the kitchen. Are you sure about this? I asked quietly. About what? About him. About the wedding. About spending $80,000 on a party. Her face hardened. He's a good man, Becca. He loves me. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning whether you love him enough to marry him, or if you're just in love with the idea of a wedding. For a moment, something flickered across her face, something that looked almost like panic. Then she smiled, that practiced smile I'd seen too many times lately. Of course I love him. I wouldn't be marrying him otherwise. But as she said it, she looked away, and I knew she was lying. I just didn't know why. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out. I was at the venue, doing a final walkthrough with the wedding coordinator, when I overheard a conversation that changed everything. I was in the bridal suite, checking the lighting, when I heard voices in the hallway outside. Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything? It was Emma's voice, but lower, more serious than I'd heard it in years. How could she? Another voice, male, familiar but not Marcus. She's too busy playing fairy godmother to see what's really happening. My blood went cold. I pressed closer to the door, straining to hear. I still think this is too risky, Emma said. If she finds out before the wedding. She won't. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late. The contracts will be signed, the papers will be filed, and your dear sister will be exactly where we need her. What if she doesn't sign?
She will.
She's too sentimental, too trusting. She'll sign because she thinks she's helping you. She has no idea she's signing her business away. My legs nearly gave out. I gripped the doorframe, trying to process what I was hearing. Business contracts? Papers? What did my business have to do with Emma's wedding? I hate lying to her like this. She's been good to me. She's been controlling you your whole life. This is your chance to finally be free of her charity, her condescension, her need to be the hero. Besides, once it's done, she'll understand. She might even thank you. The male voice laughed, and suddenly I knew who it was. David Chun, my former business partner, the man I'd bought out 3 years ago after discovering he'd been embezzling from our clients. The man who'd sworn revenge when I'd reported him to the authorities. David, I whispered to myself, the pieces finally clicking into place. The wedding is just the distraction, he continued. While she's focused on making your special day perfect, she won't notice the papers I've buried in the vendor contracts. By the time the ceremony's over, I'll own controlling interest in her company, and you'll own the other half. Split between us, just like we planned. And Marcus? Emma asked. Marcus gets paid his $10,000 and disappears. He thinks he's helping you win some kind of inheritance bet. He has no idea what we're really doing. I slumped against the wall, the full scope of their betrayal hitting me like a physical blow. Emma hadn't asked me to pay for her wedding out of love or desperation. She'd done it to distract me while she and David stole my company. The business I'd built from nothing, the success I'd worked 18-hour days to achieve, they were planning to take it all. And Marcus? He wasn't even really Emma's fiancé. He was just another pawn in their elaborate con game. I stayed in that bridal suite for 20 minutes after they left, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, to scream at Emma for betraying me, to call the police and have David arrested. But another part of me, the part that had built a successful business by being strategic and patient, knew there was a better way. If they wanted to play games, I'd play too. But I'd play to win. The next morning, I called my lawyer and told him everything. He was horrified but not entirely surprised. Apparently, David had tried similar schemes with other former partners. We spent 3 hours going through every contract I'd signed for the wedding, every vendor agreement, every seemingly innocent document Emma had asked me to approve, just as a formality. "He's good," my lawyer admitted. "The language is buried deep, disguised as standard liability clauses and payment terms. If you hadn't overheard their conversation, you might not have caught it until it was too late. Can we stop it?
We can do better than that.
We can turn it against them." Over the next week, we crafted our counter-strategy. Instead of canceling the wedding or confronting Emma directly, we'd let them think their plan was working. But we'd have surprise contracts of our own, papers that would not only protect my business, but also expose Emma and David's fraud in a way that couldn't be ignored or explained away. The beauty of their plan was also its weakness. They needed me to sign the papers willingly, publicly, with witnesses present. That meant I'd have the perfect opportunity to turn the tables on them. The night before the wedding, Emma came to my house for what she said was one last sister talk. She seemed nervous, fidgety, constantly checking her phone. "I can't believe it's finally happening," she said, but her voice was hollow, like she was reading lines from a script. "Are you happy?" I asked, studying her face. "Of course I'm happy. Tomorrow's going to be perfect." I nodded slowly. "Yes, it is. It's going to be exactly what you deserve." She looked at me sharply, as if she'd heard something in my tone, but I just smiled and offered her wine. We talked for another hour about flowers and music and seating arrangements, and the whole time I watched my sister, this woman I'd loved and protected and trusted for 38 years, lie to my face with practiced ease. When she left that night, kissing my cheek and telling me she loved me, I knew it would be the last time we'd speak as sisters. Tomorrow, everything would change. The wedding day dawned sunny and perfect, exactly as Emma had dreamed. I arrived at the venue early, ostensibly to oversee last-minute details, but really to meet with my lawyer and make sure our own surprise was in place. "Everything's ready," he assured me. "The moment they try to execute their plan, ours kicks in automatically." "And the authorities?" "They'll be here. Quietly, of course. We don't want to ruin the other guests' day any more than necessary." I spent the morning playing my role perfectly. I bustled around with flower arrangements, helped Emma get dressed, posed for pictures with the bridal party. To anyone watching, I was the devoted big sister, the generous benefactor, the woman who'd made all of this possible. Emma looked beautiful in her $8,000 dress, but there was something cold in her eyes when she looked at me. Something that might have been guilt, or might have been anticipation. "Thank you," she said as I helped her with her veil.
For everything.
"You've been more than I deserved." "Yes," I said quietly. "I have been." The ceremony was lovely. Marcus played his part well, looking appropriately nervous and happy as he waited at the altar. Emma walked down the aisle with tears in her eyes, though whether they were tears of joy or regret, I couldn't tell. They exchanged vows that Emma had written herself, full of promises about love and loyalty and trust. I listened to every word, marveling at how easily she could speak about values she'd clearly abandoned. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the guests erupted in applause. Emma and Marcus kissed, and for a moment, even knowing what I knew, I felt a pang of sadness for what we'd lost. The reception was where everything was supposed to happen. During the dinner service, David appeared at my table with a clipboard full of papers. "Just some final vendor payments and insurance forms," he said smoothly, setting them in front of me. "Needs your signature to complete the contracts." "Of course," I said, picking up the pen. "I want to make sure everything is properly handled." I signed the first page with a flourish, then the second. David watched eagerly, probably calculating how much money he'd stolen. Emma, sitting at the head table, kept glancing over nervously. When I got to the third page, I paused. "This is interesting language," I said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "This clause about transferring business ownership, that's not standard for a catering contract, is it?" David's face went pale. "It's just liability protection. Standard stuff." "Really?" I stood up, holding the papers high. "Because it looks to me like someone is trying to steal my company." The nearby conversations died. Guests turned to stare. Emma half rose from her chair, her face white with panic. "Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, my voice carrying across the reception hall. I'd like to propose a toast to my sister Emma, who asked me to pay for her dream wedding, and to David Chen, who thought he could use that wedding to steal my business. The room erupted in confused murmurs. David lunged for the papers, but I held them out of reach. You see, I continued, this isn't really a wedding at all. It's an elaborate con game. Emma isn't in love with Marcus. She's in business with David. They've been planning for months to use this celebration as cover for forging my signature on documents that would transfer my company to them. Emma stood up, her wedding dress rustling. Becca, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I overheard you planning it 2 weeks ago. The question is, do our guests understand what kind of people they're celebrating tonight? That's when the authorities stepped forward. They'd been waiting in the back of the room, dressed like ordinary guests. As they approached David and Emma with handcuffs, the room fell into complete silence. David Chen, Emma Williams, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. The wedding reception became a crime scene. Marcus, it turned out, really had thought he was helping Emma with some kind of inheritance issue. When he learned the truth, he was as shocked as anyone. She told me you were trying to cheat her out of family money, he said to me as we watched Emma being led away in handcuffs. She said this fake wedding would help her claim what was rightfully hers. I never would have agreed if I'd known she was trying to steal from you. I looked at him, this ordinary, decent man who'd been as much a victim as anyone. What will you do now? Get an annulment, I guess. Try to forget this ever happened. He shook his head. I actually thought she loved me. Turns out I was just a prop in her play. The guests filtered out gradually, some offering confused condolences, others just eager to escape the drama. By the time the police finished taking statements, the reception hall was empty except for the elaborate decorations and the untouched wedding cake. I stood alone in the middle of the room that had cost me $80,000, surrounded by flowers and fairy lights and the remnants of my sister's betrayal. The wedding she'd begged me to fund hadn't been about love or dreams or sisterhood. It had been about greed and revenge, and the kind of calculated cruelty that comes from someone who knows exactly how to hurt you. 6 months later, Emma was sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud. David got 5 years, thanks to his previous record. I never spoke to either of them again. The money I'd spent on the wedding was gone, of course. I considered it the price of learning who my sister really was. But my business was safe, stronger than ever, actually. The publicity from the case, handled tastefully by a good PR firm, brought in more clients than I'd ever had. I kept one thing from that day, a photo of Emma in her $8,000 wedding dress, being led away in handcuffs. Not out of spite, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones planning your destruction. And sometimes the most expensive gift you can give someone is the chance to show you who they really are. I never married. I never had children. But I built an empire, and I did it without anyone's help or betrayal. And every morning when I wake up in my house that no one can steal, running my business that no one can take, I remember that the best investment I ever made wasn't in Emma's fake wedding. It was in learning to trust myself more than I trusted family. Because blood may be thicker than water, but money shows you which one of them is really poison.